Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the 27th Degree with Chris and Nancy. So, today we're really excited to be discussing autism with Barbara Domingue, former executive director at Community Autism Resources, and Mary Fox, executive director at Community Autism Resources. So, before we begin our conversation, I want to thank our sponsor, Bay Coast Bank. Bay Coast Bank is just right for all of your financial needs. Visit baycoast.bank or call 508 678 7641 to learn more. And as always, you can support the 27th Degree with Chris and Nancy by subscribing to us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, by following us on Facebook and Instagram. Also, please remember to leave a review, and of course, 5-star reviews are greatly appreciated. So, before we get going, let's just, if you could tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got into the field of autism, that would be really great. Do we want to start? Who should we start with? Let's start with Barbara.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm Barbara Domain, and I entered this field because my son was diagnosed on the autism spectrum.
Okay.
So he will be 40 years old,
Yeah.
which means I gave birth to him when I was 8.
Of course.
He'll be 40 years old this November. And I remember when we were trying to find services for him, we would go to places and we would commonly hear, we don't do autism. And I really couldn't understand that. But, statistically, the incidence was like 4 for every 10,000 in the population.
I see.
Okay.
So, unlike what they are now.
Right.
So, we couldn't accept we don't do autism. So, we hooked up with some colleagues, and from that wrote some grants, and from that came Community Autism Resources.
And what is your background?
So I have an MED,
Okay.
which I went back to get after my son was diagnosed.
Okay.
It was really done because I was going to so many conferences and things. My husband said, why don't you just go to school and get some credits?
Smart man.
So,
Right.
yeah, he is. And so that's what I did. And my specialization is autism.
Nice.
So it was an MED in severe special needs with an
Okay.
additional specialization in autism.
And for everyone out there, master's in education.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All
You
right.
didn't stand still at all, did you?
No, couldn't stand still. He was a live wire. Who still is.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you for giving us some
Sure.
info on your background and how you got into the field. And yourself?
Sure. So I got into the field. My best friend in high school, her parents were always fostering children and they had varying disabilities. And I just watched them come in and out of the home. And there was one boy in particular, they adopted him when he was 4 and he was autistic. And just like watching him grow up. And again, there just a lot of teachers were like, I don't know what to do with him. And just kind of that geared my course in education to want to work in the disability field. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do at that point. And then I graduated with a bachelor's in psychology, and I got a job working at a facility that had respite care, social recreation. They had an employment, just everything in one agency. And then I was like, I want to work with autism. I find it very interesting, and no day is the same. So I was involved with that agency. And then I went to a training on autism, and that's where I met Kate Dancero, who is now my co-executive director.
That's great.
And that's how
Nice.
the ties crossed.
So maybe we could start with a very basic question. What is autism? For just to get everyone on the same page, the audience who's watching this, some may know, some may not know. So
Sure. So I think at this point, autism is pretty widely known. Barbara, do you want to explain?
Sure. It's neurological developmental disorder is what they're looking at in terms of the diagnosis. And we're looking at 3 core areas. We're looking at difficulties with communication. We're looking at difficulties in relating to the social world or interacting with the social
Mhm.
world. And then we're looking at difficulties with behavioral responses to things. So when we look for a diagnosis or when individuals are being diagnosed, those are primarily within the 3 core areas that they're looking at. Unfortunately, to jump ahead, there really isn't a formal medical test that you can do.
Okay.
There's no blood work or anything that you can do. We're just basically looking at the individual's history and those particular areas. There are other things as well, and there can be what we call comorbidities, which means that they can have sleep disorders, sensory processing disorders, all kinds of other things. But when we're looking at autism, we're looking at those primary areas.
How early can they be diagnosed?
It's usually about 18 months is
Yes,
the
sometimes.
earliest.
Wow.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
And 40 years ago, how long did you have to wait for your diagnosis with your son?
We started noticing he had some language, and then he had no language. It was
Okay.
just like things stopped. No words were coming out, a lot of gibberish.
Okay.
And then we noticed a lot of things like hand flapping and so on, lining things up. But we thought maybe he had a hearing problem.
Okay.
And I hear this from a lot of families. I've been in the field for close to 30 something years now. And I hear a lot of families say, we thought that he or she was deaf. But in my case, when I whispered popsicle, he would make a beeline for the freezer. So I knew it wasn't necessarily a hearing issue that was happening. And then we started, looking at going to various individuals to see what was happening.
Now, when you had said earlier that it was 40 years ago, like 4
Mhm.
in 10,000, what's
Mhm.
some of the more recent stats on occurrence?
It's 1 in 54 right now, right?
The latest is 1 in 36.
1 in 36.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was a new thing that came out, Mary, from the CDC. It was 1 in 54. Then it kind of dropped again.
So that's a really staggering statistic. And
Yeah.
do you think that it's being diagnosed more, or it's more prevalent, or a combination of both?
I think it's a combination
I think
of
it's
both,
both,
don't
yeah.
you? I mean, I remember, Mary, we were having a conversation about this, and somebody was saying, well, maybe are they just getting better diagnosing it? And I thought that could be it. And then somebody else said, they're probably just calling everybody autistic.
Mm.
And we could tell by the families that were coming to us that that actually wasn't the case, that
Okay.
the individuals we're seeing were pretty involved, pretty kind of classic, if you would,
Mhm.
if we're looking at those particular symptoms. So it wasn't just a matter of, oh yeah, anybody who does A is automatically autistic. I wasn't seeing that. I don't think you were seeing that as well.
No.
When we talk about being on the spectrum,
Mhm.
like if we're looking at that
Mhm.
spectrum visually, where are most people falling? Like where are those dots? Are they all in the middle, or is it skewed to one end, or
It's kind of everywhere.
Yeah.
There's that's why they call it the spectrum, because there's some people that have really high needs and can't do the day-to-day tasks and they need a lot of support. And then there's a whole bunch of people in the middle that need some support in one area and less support in other areas. And then there's people that have really high paying jobs and they're independent and they're living their best life.
Mhm.
And it's everywhere in between.
is Asperger's on the spectrum? Is that part of the spectrum?
Well, it used to be, we used to do this using the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, right? And
Mhm.
so, and that was kind of the Bible for diagnosing these kinds of things. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. But, and there used to be something called the pervasive developmental disorders. So we used to think of it as an umbrella. And under the pervasive developmental disorders, or PDD, there were things like autism, Asperger's syndrome, Rett's, um, childhood disintegrative disorder. All of those were encapsulated under that. And then DSM changed. We're now using the DSM Diagnostical Statistical Manual 5TR, which means we've made some revisions.
Okay.
They got rid of the PDD umbrella.
Okay.
And now when we look at autism, they don't talk about Asperger's anymore. We look at levels of autism.
Oh,
And Mary did a lovely job of kind of explaining that when she talked about the spectrum.
Yep. So level 1 is the higher end of the spectrum where people
Okay.
can do most of their daily living independently.
Mhm.
Level 2 requires some moderate support. And then level 3 requires high support.
Yeah.
So those are the people that need a one-to-one to be successful in their day-to-day.
Okay.
so there's 3 levels.
Mhm.
There's 3 levels now.
Yes.
And there are some people that were diagnosed with Asperger's before that are
Yeah.
more than happy to stick with that
Yeah.
title, and they call themselves Aspies, and that's just who they are, and they're
Yeah.
okay with that.
Oh,
It's not
alright.
technically a diagnosis right now, but that's what they had when they got diagnosed. So.
Okay. So if you look at the DSM-5 now, it's not there as a diagnosis currently. Okay.
Asperger's, right?
Right.
Correct.
Interesting. Okay. But I see in my practice, I've seen a broad range. It always intrigues me that, I have patients with autism that, work full time.
Hmm.
And I have patients who really have a very difficult time verbally communicating and need assistance with almost everything in all their
Yeah.
activities of daily living.
Right.
So it's always it's remarkable to me that there's such a broad range of what
Right.
we see.
Yeah.
And I'm very intrigued and interested in why there's so much of it now. I wonder, and I know this has been hypothesized, are there environmental factors, toxins, etc.
Mm.
But it does seem like there's a lot more than there ever was years before. I don't think it's just that we're diagnosing more because we're more in tune to it.
Right.
I think there has to be something else going on.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And we haven't really gotten anything significant from like DPH regarding environmental factors. I remember years and years ago, they were talking about the Polaroid factory
Yeah.
up in remember, and they were talking about the toxins that were within the water supply. And then they talked about the neighborhoods. They did a scan of the neighborhoods, and there was a significant number of individuals diagnosed on the autism spectrum
Ah,
at that point in time. But DPH did a deep dive, and they said that there was no correlation.
Yeah, these
Oh.
things are
So
hard to sort out. They
I think
really are.
so. Yeah.
And I wonder, is it the same in other countries? Are what we're seeing here, is it the same in Europe and in Asia, in the Middle East?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You
I'm not
wonder.
sure to
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
I do know that I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but I'm certified as a peers provider, which is a social skills education group or program. And that developer, she goes all throughout the country, and it's translated in 30 something languages, and she'll go out and do the training in other countries. So I know that it's there. It's not just a US thing,
Okay.
but I'm not sure what the prevalence is in other countries.
Yeah.
there's been a lot of controversy sometimes about the cause of autism. Can you kind of speak to that? And are there any like prevalent theories out there now, or
I mean, are there causes that have been debunked and causes that
Yeah.
have not been, that are still
Right.
out there floating around? That I hear a lot, but I'll let you guys speak a bit about it.
Well, the
It's
one
very
that was
polarizing.
Yeah.
the one that was debunked that I'm grateful for is the refrigerator mother theory. That was years ago. And basically, what they said was that individuals had autism because their mothers were cold and distant and didn't really give their child the
Mm.
amount of love that was needed. So we're happy to see that go by the
Yeah.
wayside.
That's a terrible thing when they blame
Right.
is.
parents for
Oh
something
my
that,
God, it was
must be so damaging potentially.
yeah, it is. It was. Well, at least, and when I read it, and that wasn't even the prevalent thinking when my son was diagnosed, it was still very painful to see that somebody would blame
right,
somebody for something like that,
right,
Um, I'm trying to think of some other things that well, I mean, when we look at it, we know environmental, they do talk about environmental factors, and they do talk about genetics and
Okay.
whether there's a genetic link, and there's been some studies about that. Um, and they said that if you have a child with autism, there is like maybe a 60% chance that you might have a child who may not necessarily have autism, but may have like a learning disability or something along those lines. I'm trying to think if I had, because I tried to do a little bit of research on that just to be sure. But so I knew it was environmental, and I knew it was genetic.
No,
and I'm not
they
really-
had at one time said some vaccines they were trying to like relate those
Hmm.
to autism.
That
Where
was
are we
good.
with
That's
that?
a very controversial
Controversial, yeah.
topic.
Whoops.
Mercury and vaccines.
Yeah.
And I'll let you
Yeah.
folks speak about that. I have my own opinion on it, but go ahead.
I mean, I've done a lot of research on it, and depending on what book I'm reading or what journal I'm looking in, they say very different
Both
things.
sides.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's very divisive, and I feel like it's a lot of other topics in this country right now as well. It's just one that I don't want to speak too much on because I am not a doctor.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
I am going to refer back to you, the
Yeah, I mean,
professional in that realm.
I mean, if you look at the data that's out there, from what I've
Right.
seen, it's never been proven.
No.
Exactly.
There was a study, and I believe out of England, that became kind of a landmark study that brought forward this whole anti-vaccine type
Right.
movement when it came to the risk of autism, and that actually got debunked
Debunked. Right.
because
Yep.
the study was faulty, and actually
Mhm.
there was some data that, from what I have read, was actually altered
Right.
to get the
Yeah.
result that
Oh.
they received. So it wasn't a good study,
Mhm.
at the least. That's actually probably a kind way to put
Mhm.
it. But when that study came out, a lot of folks latched onto it because we want to understand why this
Right.
happens, right? If you have a child who has autism, it's such a life altering issue. You want to know
Right.
why. And
Mhm.
this was something that a lot of folks latched onto, including a lot of famous people
Right. I was gonna
out in
say
the public.
celebrities. Yeah.
So I still
Mhm.
hear it. It's still out
Yep.
there. It's still pushed by a lot of I'd say some famous folks,
Mhm.
and but the study that it was supported by was really debunked.
Right.
So
They were talking about also, the vaccines DPT and the
yeah.
pertussis, and it also led to a lot of discussion about the amount of vaccinations young children get,
Hmm.
um, and the cocktails that
Yeah.
are given, and the fact that we as parents, when our children were about to receive vaccines, we had to sign something that says, we understand that there is a slight chance of A, B, C, and D. Um, and the thought was, or the discussion was, that by combining these various things together into cocktails, that maybe that caused the nervous system to be overloaded or not
Mm.
develop properly. So parents were trying to get the vaccines teased out. So instead of getting what was it, diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus
Tetanus.
together, that maybe they could go and stagger them one at a time. But then there was a problem with the pharmaceutical companies because it was more reasonable to
Mhm.
combine those vaccines together. So a
It
lot
gets
of different
messy.
I think the
discussions.
bottom line is it's a lot
Yeah.
of controversy still, but it's never really been
Absolutely.
proven.
Nothing, right, nothing
And so,
factual.
I mean, I'm very pro vaccine. I think
Mhm.
vaccines save a lot of lives,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't want
Yeah.
anyone to get the message that you should not have your children vaccinated because
No,
of this concern.
we tell that, we share that with parents. We
Mhm.
say it's really important that, if you feel that there's a problem, talk to your pediatrician about it,
Right,
but that and they have to be vaccinated in order to go to school.
right, right. But there have been, some outbreaks of diseases that we thought were eradicated
Right,
lately
because people weren't
because
right,
parents are homeschooling. They're not getting their
right,
kids vaccinated, and a lot of them were homeschooling for that reason, actually.
right,
Mhm.
right. Yeah.
So it's an interesting, very controversial
It
political
is.
topic,
It is.
but I'm still very pro-vaccine,
Yeah.
and I
And
think
we
it
deal
saves a
with the
lot of lives.
nitty-gritty. We deal with families and individuals with ASD, where they're at and what they're currently dealing with. So that's almost for us something that's, I don't want to say certainly not insignificant where the families are concerned, but we kind of say, where are we and what do we need to do? You tell us where we need to go
Mhm.
with your son or your daughter and how we can best support them.
Right.
So, can you expand on that a little bit? So, I have a child, 18 months, 2 years old. Now he has the diagnosis of autism. What's my next step? Where do I go?
You can call Community Autism Resources.
There you go. Okay.
And what's the number?
And then we would just kind of talk to you. We have two full-time staff, sorry, we have one full-time staff, one part-time staff, and the whole job is to be that person on the other end of the phone to talk to you for however long you need to be on the phone.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's a quick 10-minute phone call. Sometimes Jan's been on the phone with families for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And she's a mom of an
Mhm.
autistic son, and she's just the woman on the other end of the phone that's been there and has the ability to calm people down in a way like no other.
Yeah.
And we also provide so many referral lists. So if you're looking, she had one recently. Somebody wanted to get their daughter's haircut, and she was like, I don't know where to go that can handle her because she's behavioral. And we have referral lists for people
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
Um, hair dentists, doctors,
Yes.
therapists,
Nice.
everything. And then we can also walk you through the process of what you need to do for the state and what you need to do to apply for Social Security, Mass Health, Department of Developmental Services, and we're along the path for the entire time that you need us.
So you're a fantastic resource
Thank you.
because, I mean, honestly, you're bowled over by that diagnosis and just trying to deal with that within your family unit. And God knows you can't do this mentally inside your own head without some help.
And it's never a one-shot deal. Parents can call as often as they like, and spend as much time trying to get information as possible. I mean, one of the things that we've always tried to do is just step by step by step. Because as you
Right.
said, there are so many things, and it can be very overwhelming. But just knowing that someone's on the journey with you is a really, really helpful thing.
And it's a lot of alphabet soup. There's a lot of DDS, SSI,
Yeah.
SSDI,
Right.
ABA.
It's
It's
confusing.
everything is an initial, an acronym. So you can just call us and be like, "What does this mean?"
Yeah,
We can help you.
exactly.
So what
Um,
kind of staff do you have at your facility?
So right now we have about 15 staff. Not everybody is full time. A lot of them are parents of autistic children. And we just moved to a new office in Taunton, so it's more centrally located to the region. And we have people that coordinate events for families to come, and it's free of charge. We just want everybody to come, have a good time, and not worry about, oh, my child's being loud at a movie.
Yeah.
Well, you're in a room full of people that have that experience.
Yeah.
We also have a lot of adults programming that we're incorporating now. We have a fundraising and development team. What am I missing, Barbara?
You have social workers?
We don't.
Mhm.
I'm
What's-
going
you
to.
have
I'm in
people-
grad.
Oh, you have people who are knowledgeable
Yes,
in-
yes.
in
I'm in
what
grad
they
school
do.
right now to
Oh,
be
yeah.
a
Oh
mental
my
health
gosh.
counselor.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
excellent,
she is. Yeah. So, and the other things that they do. So, if I could just take a step back, we are funded mainly through the Department of Developmental Service. Here in
Okay.
Massachusetts, we're very fortunate that there are autism support centers in every region of Massachusetts. So we
Nice.
are one of a number. There's one in the Western Mass, there's one in the North Shore, etc. We cover all of southeastern Massachusetts, which is 88 cities and towns.
Okay.
So when Mary said we're now central, that kind of puts Taunton like right in the middle of all of that. And some of the work that's done, Mary mentioned these free family events. We occasionally run social groups. We have an assistive technology center there where we help match the individual to any kind of technology that would be helpful to them, both
Nice.
high and low tech. Mary's part of the Gotchal Access Program, which is, you want to talk a little bit
Sure.
about that and the other two pieces that
Yep.
you do?
So I just wanted to expand a little bit on the assistive tech because a lot of people hear that and they think iPad first
Yeah,
off.
Right.
It's
sure.
so much more than that. I've seen Shannon go out and see some people that can benefit from a switch. So it's something that like they can use their head to turn a light on, and they've never been able to just like turn the light on before.
Oh my
And then she
God.
goes in and she's like, "Well, I can easily fix this for you."
Yeah.
And she can. She taught one woman how to take a picture of her cat. She didn't want to leave her home because she didn't want to leave her cat behind. And Shannon showed her how to use her camera to take a picture of a cat. And she was like, "Oh, I can take her with me now in camera form." And now she has a job. So it's things like that
Nice.
just like little tweaks that can be a
Right.
game changer for people.
Of course.
And then the Gottschall Access Program is a college certificate program, and it can be like that stepping stone. So I don't know if college is the right next step for me, and I don't want to spend all that money and fail. So I'm going to go to the Department of Developmental Services funds the Gottschall Access Program, and it's a 3-year certificate program. And the students go 12 weeks on, and then they get 5-week breaks. And they have classes that they can take in life skills, theater, health and wellness, and those are the
My
core
God, that's
classes.
great.
And then they have 2 enrichments that they can choose from. And it's very individualized based. So some students want more movement. So we have like sports and games this summer. Others are into art. We've had psychology classes. We've had philosophy. We take what the students want and we try to do our best to incorporate that into the program so that they can get.
Yeah. I think this is an interesting point, for the audience to understand, because I think, I see autistic kids, young adults that go to college and they succeed and do very well. but I know that a lot of people out there think of autism as all of autistic patients having, intellectual deficits, and it's not always that way. I mean, many autistic people are very, very intelligent
Yes.
Yeah.
and in an incredible way.
So that's a great segue into one of our other programs that we
Mhm.
have.
There you go.
We
I
have
read minds.
we have a college navigation program,
Mhm.
and that's a brand new program that the state just started last year. And it's just to help the student whatever they need to succeed in college. So that could be maybe I just want to go to school and have a social life,
Right.
but I don't know
right.
how to make friends, so we can work on that. Or
Mhm.
maybe I don't know how to prioritize. I see the syllabus, it's a 3-page syllabus. I have all the assignments. I don't know how to prioritize what to do. So sitting down with the student and working on the priority list. Sometimes it's just advocating for themselves
Mhm.
and they don't know where to go to get those. The Office of Disabilities has a lot of, what's the word that I'm looking for? They can help people out. Maybe take longer on a test.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Right, right, right.
Accommodations.
Accommodations. Thank
Right,
you.
right,
Yes.
right.
It escaped me. So we can go to the Office of Disability with them and teach them how to advocate for themselves and what they need, what kind of accommodations are available, and what would be helpful. And then we can just be with them. I meet with some people for half an hour once a week. I meet for 2 hours once a week for other students. So it's very based on what they need to be successful in college. Some people, it's just, I don't know how to enroll in class. I can do
Mhm.
everything else on my own, but I don't know how to register. So
Mhm.
that's all that I do for them. So yeah, a lot of people can go and have a great college career and go on and get jobs and make more money than I do.
And I think that surprises people when they hear that, right? Because they don't have a general understanding of what autism is, and they don't understand it. There's a wide range of how that can present. So I think it's a great point.
Yeah.
You know what's great about this too? It's like sometimes you're just unsure. It's like you don't know what's out there. You don't know what your capabilities are. Have you seen someone like me before? And can
Never seen anyone
can
like
you
you.
identify maybe some so not nice. Can you identify some pathways that
Yeah.
you like people like me have been successful before? And I think that's like thank God because
Yeah.
that's half the battle sometimes. And then just to deal with the organizations and the payment sources and the insurances that you deal with, that can be hours on the phone for someone who just doesn't know how to
Mhm.
navigate that can be a complex mess,
Right.
a complex
Mm.
hot mess.
Yeah, I think so.
And it's nice to know that that support for families can continue from the moment that their child gets diagnosed all the way through adulthood. You
Mhm.
know, that there's kind of a stabling place that they can go and get some information and get some support. The other thing I wanted to mention was that um, Community Autism Resources also does a parent retreat each year
Mm.
with Dr. Barry Prezant and his wife Elaine Meyer. And we're working on our 27th. But what that
Wow.
allows is for parents to come together. We don't have children at the retreat. Parents to come together, and it's just a place where they can relax. It's not a conference, so they can choose to go. We have discussion sessions. They can choose to go,
That's
or they
great.
can choose to just sit down outside and enjoy the beautiful scenery and just like reconnect as a couple. But um, that's been a wonderful support for families to have. And I think we learn a lot from parents when we sit and we listen to them. They talk about, their isolation and how coming to the retreat was maybe the first time they didn't feel like they were so alone.
Yeah.
And then they talk about the various things that are stressful for them.
Right.
I haven't been able to sleep through the night because my child has difficulty sleeping through the night, or, I'm worried about economically what's going to happen to us, what's going to happen in the future. I mean, those are all things that within a
questions.
very comfortable and safe environment they can talk about.
Right.
I went to the retreat for the first time last year, and I thought one of the things that you did was really cool. In the very beginning, you asked the parents how many people have a child that's 5 or under,
Right.
how many between 5 and 10, 10 to 15, and you can just see that the parents of the younger ones are looking at like, oh, I want to talk to you later. You have
Yeah.
a 15-year-old. You can
Yeah,
tell me what
yeah.
to expect for the
Nice.
transition.
Mhm.
So it was
Nice.
really cool to see that kind of connection happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, there must be like you said, a really significant effect on families and
Yeah.
couples, marriages, etc. So it's nice to have that type of support that you're
Right. Yeah.
discussing. Yeah.
And they don't necessarily have to come as a couple. We've had single
Hmm.
parents come before as well, and we try to be
Hmm.
very sensitive to that. But the idea is to be with other parents in a place that's safe for you to talk
Hmm.
about
Great.
whatever's on your mind.
Primacare is Southeastern New England's trusted leader in medical care. With offices in Fall River and surrounding communities, we're dedicated to your well-being. Our carefully selected team of more than 150 providers offers world-class primary and specialty medical care. Primacare doctors are supported by a skilled staff trained to deliver comprehensive radiology, imaging, and testing services. Primacare is large enough to take care of all your medical needs, but small enough to care for you personally. Primacare is by your side.
Now, with 1 in 54 being diagnosed, it doesn't seem like there's too much being missed with this diagnosis anymore. It seems like the being caught relatively at a early, not so much
So
maybe.
with all of the new, like it's being highlighted in the media a lot,
Hmm.
and it's one of the hot topics these days. A lot of people are
1 in 37. Sorry.
That's okay. A lot of people are kind of self-diagnosing themselves as
Mhm.
adults. They're like, "Oh, my child is getting diagnosed with all the things that I do.
Mhm.
Maybe I need to
Yeah.
get diagnosed." So we're seeing that a lot too. So
Oh.
it's been very interesting. And another statistic that we've been watching is Jan, the one that is on the other end of the phone call. She's been getting a lot of autistic adults calling in,
Yeah.
and they've been females.
Hmm.
So it's a lot of times, especially back when your son was diagnosed 40 years ago,
Yep.
it was a boy's disorder.
Right. 4-1.
Yeah.
They're still saying it's 4-1, but that's not.
That Jan's been tracking it
She's been
because
tracking,
she's like,
yeah.
I'm getting a lot of phone calls. I don't think this is 4-1 anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So that's
yeah.
something that we are kind of keeping our eye on
Mm-hmm.
just to be in the know.
It's pretty fascinating you say that. I never thought about it, but most of the patients I have in my practice who are autistic, I think there is definitely a predominance of
male.
males. Yeah. But it sounds like it might be changing perhaps.
I think that a lot of times, and I could be speaking off cuff here, but I think that it's misdiagnosed a lot in girls too.
You think so?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, what would the diagnosis be instead that they would,
Attention
okay.
deficit.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think I'm seeing that a lot, or just like not being as social as people. I don't know. Maybe,
Mhm.
do you have anything that you want to add to
I
that?
don't know, nonverbal learning
Yeah.
disabilities sometimes, just somewhat neurotypical. I mean, there's all kinds of, buzzy words out there that we see, being passed around. But, and I'm trying to think back. I mean, even in our office, when we first started, most of us had sons and only one of us had a daughter.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah, it was.
I think the special interest, this is just something I was just thinking of too. So the special interest is a big thing. And a lot of boys are interested in trains,
Mhm.
and that's cute when they're young. But then when they get older, it seems like, oh, he's still interested in trains.
Yeah.
But with girls, they're interested in ponies. And I'm 39 and neurotypical, and I'm also still obsessed with ponies. So I think that maybe some
Great.
of the special, it's not causing as much attention
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
getting the attention that
Slipped under the
yeah.
radar. Mhm.
that's just my gross assumption. I'm not, again, a doctor.
So when say you have 3 children at home and then your 4th child, you're suspecting autism and you get the diagnosis of autism, what's the conversation like with the other children as far as interactions and what would be helpful and tips and things like that?
That's another area where we can help out with. I've gone to a couple homes to talk to the siblings. There was a couple families that just didn't know why the person with autism was getting more attention, and why was it okay
Yep.
for him to do this and
Right.
not us. So I just went out and had a
great.
conversation with the other 2 kids, and I was like, it's just how he is. It's his brain, and his brain is different than your brain,
Mhm.
and he's not getting special treatment. He might look like that on the surface, but your mom and dad are just taking care of him to the best of their ability as they are with you.
Mhm.
And it just looks a little different for everybody.
I
That's a
think
good way to
that's
explain it.
fantastic that you go out to
Yeah.
the homes and do like home assessments and things like that.
And the co-executive director, Kate Dansereau, is a twin of a person with autism.
Oh,
And
geez.
so we used to do sibling groups in the past and so on. So sometimes she'll, like at the retreat, she'll come and she'll talk. She'll have a session called, brothers and sisters, and parents will come to try to figure out what's the best way to approach this? And I think what we've discovered, right, Mary, is that it's like one family at a time. And people with autism say the same thing. If you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And so for us, it's person by person, family by family, need by
That's a
need,
great point.
you know?
Because I'll tell you, every patient I have that has autism, they're all completely different,
Right.
and their level of ability to function and whatnot. So that's a great point.
Yeah. Well, I wish that I had coined that, but I didn't. But it's a useful one, yeah.
It is. It is.
Mhm.
It really is.
What is the best way to provide support? So, like, if my sister had an autistic child,
Mhm.
like, what are some things that I could do?
I think just recognize that every behavior is trying to communicate something.
Oh, good
So
point.
it's not just I'm going to bite my hand because I want to hurt myself. It's I'm biting my hand because I'm dysregulated. So trying to help that person figure out what is causing the dysregulation and asking them
Mm.
instead of just being like, "Oh, I think that they want this." Just ask the person, "Are the lights in here too bright? Are the noises is the volume on the TV in the other room too loud?
Mhm.
Is your food too mushy?"
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
ask the person. I think
Right.
that's the
Mhm.
best way to support. And not everybody can communicate their needs, and that's when the parents become their best ally. They know them best.
Yeah.
But just being open and communicating with everybody in the family, I think, is huge.
Med management, and this may be a question for you as well, but it has to be a fine balance with mm, prescribing medications. And again, everyone's very specific. But what is that balance? Because you don't want somebody snowed. You want
Mhm.
them to be like functioning at their optimal level. But
I
how,
think it would depend on what you're prescribing the medication for.
Yeah.
Not all individuals with autism are on medication. My son has
Mhm.
never been on medication. And yet there are some that might have seizure disorders. So you'd need to look at that. There are some that, might have some attentional difficulties. So there might be. But I think for us, one of the things that we always try to do is listen very carefully and respectfully to parents, pull together. And this is where Jan Randall, brilliant woman that she is, she will research everything. She doesn't
yeah,
know it. She will research it and find it. But trying to find the things that families need. And in terms of medication, I think families need to do what they feel, is best for their son or daughter. And again, it depends on what you would be treating.
right.
Mhm.
So, what about school plans and things like that? Do you assist with that as well?
So we do help the parents through the transition stage because that can be really confusing. And there's a lot of child supports available through the school and the town. And then once the child is either graduating at 18 or staying
Yeah.
until 22 and then ending their school career, the adult world can be really scary. And there's not as many supports, and you have to know what questions to ask and know who to ask them to. So that's where our agency and other agencies like us can come in handy.
Mhm.
And just kind of the transition process should start a lot earlier than people realize. They're saying to
14.
start around 14,
Mhm.
Oh, really?
and then
Yeah.
that's still
Mhm.
4 years before the student's going to transition
That's
into
right.
adult world,
Adulthood.
but they want to get everything all set beforehand. And they're looking at the IEPs and what can we put on goals to make it a successful transition, and
Mhm.
just trying to stick to those IEP
Mhm.
goals can be
Yep.
difficult
And I know this is a broad question, but what are some of the challenges adults with autism, can face? And I know there's a broad spectrum of of
Mhm.
of, of issues that people with autism can have as adults. But I'm just curious because it seems like maybe there's less support as they reach adulthood than when they're younger. They don't have the school support
I feel
anymore
like
and
it's not as
whatnot.
individualized.
Yeah.
I feel like, okay, you have a disability, you go here.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
that's not, I mean, autism, as we've been talking about for however long,
Yeah.
it's a spectrum.
It's
So
a
there's some
spectrum.
people that can fit
Exactly.
into those other programs. And then there's other people that are going to sacrifice their independence, their voice, and
Mhm.
everything just to kind of fit in the box of a disability program. And then there's also, were you going to say something?
No,
Oh,
I'm listening.
so just transportation is a huge barrier.
Mm.
Right.
A lot of people could have work if they could get to work,
Mhm.
but they need a house and food that mom and dad support, and they have to work to provide those things. So they can't get to their job,
Right.
and that's a big roadblock. And then just having like that individualized plan.
Mhm.
Like Barbara had said, you meet one autistic person, you've met one autistic person,
Hmm.
they're all going to need something different. And sticking them in a program with a bunch of other people that have the same disability or other disabilities can really be detrimental to like their growth.
So is there less support for adults with autism than children, do you think? I mean, it sounds like it's less individualized as one
Different.
ages.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's different. And when you're a child, you have the IEP leverage of
Right.
the
That's what
law, which
exactly.
Right,
is very
right.
specific about what children should be getting and what children shouldn't be getting. When you become adult, those mandates don't exist. I mean, you
Okay.
do have there's like 504, et cetera, but they're not the same. They don't have the same teeth.
Hmm.
And so anything that an adult gets, as Mary and I know, is based on what the legislature gives to the Department of Developmental Services, and then in turn, how they can turn that into services for adults. So it certainly is very different. And for a lot of parents, it's like a rude awakening because they're used to going to their yearly IEP meetings and stating their child's needs and, being successful,
Sure.
hopefully, in getting what they need. And then their child becomes an adult. And there is an ISP, an individual support plan for adults if they're within the DDS, services. But even that doesn't necessarily guarantee the perfect fit of a program. So, yeah,
Now, you
it's
don't have a cap on age or anything, right? It's anyone who feels like they need a resource can come and
mhm,
speak to you.
yeah.
So
One other
that's
thing
great.
that you made clear, and I love, is that you have so many people directly involved with your agency
Mhm.
that work for you that have a close family member
Mhm,
with autism. So they're speaking both academically, but
right.
also with
Right.
that experience
Yeah.
behind them.
Mhm.
That's probably invaluable to
It
these
is.
families that
Mm.
need just to talk with someone. With the adults, do you ever get involved? Like, if I'm 70 and I'm very worried now and I'm not 70. Don't make a slide.
No, I didn't say a thing. I did not say a
I could
thing.
feel it coming. But now I'm getting older and I'm worried about my son or
Mhm.
daughter. What can you tell me some plans that have been put in place for situations
So
like
there
that?
are trainings that exist that are titled like supporting the aging caregiver. There are.
I am an aging caregiver.
I'll send you the information. And that just kind of gives people an idea of what the next steps can be.
Yeah.
A lot of people lean on their other family members.
Hmm.
Mhm. To do that, yeah. It's true. Mm.
What have been some of your, if you don't mind me asking, it's a personal question, but what have been some of your major struggles and how did you overcome those?
Um, I think when he was younger, having people listening to us, being respectful, we were very particular about what kinds of intervention we wanted for our sons, what we wanted and what we didn't want, and
Hmm.
having people respect that. Um, I think I remember when he was little, he used to do a lot of stimming behavior. Like he would put I call it the letter F. You know, he would like make these things with his hands and he would move them before his eyes. And somebody says, you got to get rid of that. That's just inappropriate. It looks weird. And he shouldn't be doing that anymore.
Mm.
And my husband and I were like, I don't know if we should do that. And luckily, my son is verbal. Um, and so he's able to tell me, and he's gotten better at that over the years, but he's able to tell me certain things about the whys. So one day he was pacing his room and he was doing this kind of thing. And then I would see him stop and scribble something on a paper. At least I thought it was scribble. So I said, Nick, what are you doing when you do this? And he said, well, I'm designing a game in my brain. And I went, what?
Oh,
So in his mind, he loves video games,
Hmm.
and he had a map in his mind of a video game, and he called these his stem creatures, these little hand movements. And he would, what I thought was just like
random.
odd random
Yeah.
movements, right? He was actually moving them through a maze and then writing that down. And I was very glad that I didn't extinguish that behavior
Oh
Right.
my
because
God, yes.
I thought that just taught us a lot about him. So I think listening to us as parents and listening to what we know and what we feel is best and working collaboratively with us. We can't always have what we want. But if somebody's listening and trying with us, that helps. As he got older, I think we're at that aging parent stage right now where
Right.
we're thinking not only about my son, but about my daughter as well, and what will happen to them, when we're no longer able to do the things that we're doing. We're not very good at that yet. I'll confess that, but we've made the pledge to, think about
Yeah.
it and start to put
Right.
things
Right.
into place. But I think what's hard for us is that the people that I would trust are our age.
Yeah.
So you have to look a couple of
Right.
generations younger, and
Right.
it's hard to ask a 13-year-old, do
It's
you
a lot
think
of
in about
thought.
15 years,
Right.
you might step in and,
Right. Right.
you
Yeah, that can be difficult
That
for
would be
sure.
a challenge.
So
Mm.
one of the other topics that we wanted to discuss was just like loneliness and friendships and how to really support that aspect.
That's my soapbox. I'm going to jump on it
Oh,
real
Right,
quick.
please.
okay.
Great.
Mary's
Excellent.
Go for it, Mary.
So I am certified in friendship making, basically. It's the Peers, which is program for the education and enrichment of relational skills. And I can help teach autistic adults how to start conversations and then how to end them appropriately, because you can't just turn around and walk away because the other person's going to be like, well, all right, bye. So just kind of like the conversational aspects. We talk about dating. We talk about internet safety. We talk about bullying. And in these days, with cyberbullying is huge. We can spend 3 chapters just on cyberbullying. And that links to, I'm not sure, you're medically
Mhm.
ept, so I'm sure you get the Surgeon General just came out with an epidemic on loneliness. And it was in
Right.
May of 2023.
Yeah.
And he stated that the loneliness epidemic right now is having the same effect on our bodies as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And it's causing a lot of early heart disease, a lot of other diagnoses that we're spending billions of dollars to fix, but it's just loneliness and it's just the connection. So when you take that, and that's the
interesting.
Surgeon General warning for the country, and then you take autistic people that have a difficult time already with social stuff,
Right.
my job, like I am so passionate about just helping people connect. And I want you to, if you want friends, I want to be that person that can help you make friends. And I want you to be able to talk about trains if that's your thing. It's not weird to talk about what you like. I talk about horses all the time. So just like finding other people and
Mhm.
knowing how to have that back and forth reciprocity that the conversations have, and knowing like, I just can't talk about trains for 25 minutes. I also have to ask you, do you like trains? And then don't forget, listen to what they're saying.
Right.
So that's just my huge thing, is just we need to get out of the house. We need to get off of social media. People are they're keyboard warriors and they're just ready to just say
Right.
anything that they want
Absolutely.
because there's nobody on the other end of that
People are
computer.
brutal on
Brutal,
the internet
yeah.
because, you're not face to face with someone.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
really terrible.
Yeah.
Really
It's-
terrible.
And that's like countrywide. People are just,
is.
it's very
Yeah.
divisive. I can say whatever I want because nobody's on the other
Right.
end saying, well, that
You
hurts
don't
my
have to take
feelings.
accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So just trying to have these supports in place so that we're going to have social nights out, and it's going to be based
Mhm.
on what the adults want to do. So a lot of times, and it's not for lack of wanting to, but a lot of times we put them in like, we're going to have a night where everybody can come and do yoga together. Well, not everybody's going to want to do yoga.
Right.
Right.
So we need to
Mhm.
start talking to people and saying, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to go to Buffalo Wild Wings and watch the Pats game? Because
Heck yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right? I'll be there too. And just having more like staff support there so that we can start conversations and get the back and forth going. And then we're just going to kind of sneak away a little and let the natural flow of the conversation keep going. And I'm all about connection. I also teach a sexual education course too.
Nice.
And I just think that if we're staying in our homes, we're only feeding that loneliness epidemic. And we need to be out there and we need to help these people make friends and make the
agree.
connections.
Yeah, the pandemic must have been particularly
Horrible.
difficult for the
Mm.
autistic community, I'm guessing.
Mhm.
This is already probably a sense of isolation,
Yep.
right? And now it's amplified.
Mhm.
A lot of the students that are in our Got Child Access program right now graduated high school in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And whenever we talk about, oh, we should meet up and play bingo virtually, they're like, nope, I'm not doing anything virtually anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They want to also be off of the computer.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you find that autistic persons find it easier to make relationships with other autistic people or with non-autistic people?
I think it's a mix.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that if you have somebody that's willing to hear what you have to say, you're going to talk to them no matter what their diagnosis is.
Mhm.
That's true.
Yeah.
There was a movement that said that, people with disabilities should only be socializing with people without disabilities.
Okay.
And, but the problem with that was, and I'll use my son as an example, he had a friend who had autism, and that's who he wanted to spend time with. And
Mhm.
that's the relationship that we wanted to encourage because it was a social relationship. So I think that, right, we can't predict that for
Mhm.
people, that they should choose, just as we choose the people that we want to be friends with.
It's a variety.
Right,
Right.
exactly. They should choose the people as long as they have a choice,
That's
Yeah.
the mantra of peers is friendship is a choice.
Yeah.
I can't just walk up to you and say, "Oh, we're best friends now." It has to
Yeah.
be your choice and my
My
choice.
choice. Yeah. Yeah.
And we talk a lot about paid staff and the difference of like paid staff can't really be like your best friend. They can be a support
That's
person.
important
Mhm.
too.
Yep.
And that comes
Yeah.
into play a lot with sexual
Yeah.
education because some people, if
Right.
you spend enough time with people, you're going to form
Right.
a bond and potentially attraction. So we just need to make sure that we're teaching a paid staff member can't make that choice.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great teaching.
That's good.
So, I mean, I find it difficult sometimes to know where just to go to hang out. I mean, it's, you have church, I guess.
Mhm.
But I mean, otherwise, I go to the park, but I'm not sitting with 20 people. I'm walking around by myself, not aimlessly. I'm,
Yep.
I'm talking about Buttonwood. Walking
Aimlessly
around.
wandering.
Exactly.
Sometimes
Talking to
we
the elephants.
find you wandering around Somerset.
Exactly.
You call the police, bring you back home.
My buddies.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you a story later about me calling the police the other night. But yeah, so like if they're not planned, organized events, like how does that happen?
So we suggest basing it off of your common interests. So what do you like to do for fun?
Make
putting
fun
you
of
on the spot.
Chris.
So that's work, right?
Okay, sorry.
So then you
Yeah.
come to work and you make connections with him, and that's how you're gonna
Ridicule
get.
me. That's pretty much.
Yeah, pretty
yeah,
much.
yeah.
I like staying active. So I like
No,
go,
you
going
got a
for
lot of
walks.
things you do.
and,
Yeah,
like
you're
tennis and golf and stuff
yeah,
like
you're
that.
you do a lot of golf. That's great.
So golf course, you can meet people if you go to the clubhouse, get a glass of wine or two beforehand, and socialize. Oh, who are you golfing with today? Oh, I'm golfing with my sister or my cousin.
Yeah.
And then you
yeah.
can just form conversations that way, and then just keep going and keep meeting the same people there, and then keep talking to them and keep reaching back out to me, and I'll help you along the way.
Now, what are some of the challenges like that adults, like the maybe two most common challenges? And you've talked about the transportation challenge, but like like maybe some specific challenges that you've helped someone with to overcome, and what did that look like?
Having it go wrong in the past and then being afraid to try it again.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
great.
So I've tried to make friends. I went to a dance and I saw somebody that I wanted to get to know, and I went up and I tried to talk to her, and she snubbed me and turned around. So I don't want to try again.
Mhm.
So it's
Right.
just getting them to feel comfortable accepting that we all get rejected sometimes, and that's just a part of
Right.
relationships.
Right.
True.
I think that's one of the biggest barriers. Other than that, it's just having the
Employment.
Yeah,
It's
employment.
a huge problem. It's not that they can't get a job, but sometimes keeping a job is very, very difficult. Because of organizational issues, or maybe that social piece is not what people were expecting, and so they get let go of that job.
Mm.
So
And then I just think about employment, and some of my best friends are my coworkers.
Yeah.
So if we can get them in employment
Right.
that will help support that,
Mhm.
then there's the natural relationship that's going to be formed there too.
Are there certain organizations that you work with that are very hire friendly to this population?
It varies depending. I can't say like organizationally that there's one that's like, yes, they'll hire everybody.
Right.
But you have to go in and talk to managers, and it's some people that are going out for their employment on their own might call. I've done a couple of mock interviews just on the phone.
Nice.
And be like, I'm going to ask you some questions that they're going to ask you in the interview, and I'm going to try to trick you up a little bit just so that they can feel comfortable. Like, oh, Mary already got me on that one. I know how to say this. And then just having that support of making a connection at work, and that way when you're I don't know why the boss said this to me the other day, and then you can have that connection there, and they're like, well, that he's just in a bad mood today.
Mhm.
So you talked about a lot of your offices in Massachusetts. Now, a lot of our listeners are from Rhode Island too. Do they have a similar resource, or can people from Rhode Island call you?
There is the Autism Project of Rhode Island, and
Okay.
they're a very similar organization to us.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
usually we would, one of the things that we do that Jan and Lindsay try to do in the office is to make sure that families get connected where they need to be connected. So in Massachusetts, the department, DDS, also has family support programs. And within the family support program, they might be able to get some flexible funds, they might be able to get some respite. So making sure that they know where to go for various things. And
Nice.
the Autism Project of Rhode Island does something very similar.
Very
How
nice.
does respite work? Because I got to think for the caregivers, this can be difficult.
Yeah.
And they're, respite would be great,
hmm
during those times of
Right.
increased stress. How does that work?
So we would make sure that families are connected to their family support program in their area. So for Fall River, Somerset, Swansea, I believe Westport, it would be, there are some family support programs that provide support to those individuals in those cities and towns. There is there are some flexible funds available that parents can use
Okay.
for respite. There are respite trained providers that they can also tap into if they have the funds to be able to do that through their DDS connection. There's a couple of different ways. Once upon a time, you had to go through a respite agency, but now, if like my sister could be a respite provider if
Right,
I choose to
right.
have her do that.
Right.
If I had a young child. So there's some nice flexibility there for parents.
That's
So if
great.
they wanted to follow, if anyone listening wanted to follow up on that certain
Mhm.
aspect, the respite care, they could contact one of you
Mhm.
Yes. Yep.
And we
just
would
talk
have her
about that.
contact Jan or him contact Jan.
Great.
So
Perfect.
we have a website and everybody is listed on the website and kind of their areas that you could talk to anybody in the office, but certain people have certain areas that they're really, really very, that they excel in. And so the website, if you go on there, you could see that as well.
And what's the website address?
It's community-autism-resources.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Very good.
Great.
Can you share an inspirational or a heartwarming story with us?
I have so many.
I know it's, I was thinking about this and I was
Okay.
thinking that there are little things and then there are big things.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we do is we provide like a free event for families every month. And lots of times it's movies.
Mhm.
It's not always movies, but families like to be able to go to movies and they don't pay. They come and we have all kinds of supports. We might, if we know the name of the movie, we might have a communication board so that they can talk about the movie after if they're nonverbal. Lori thinks of all kinds of jokes and things that go along with it. So they get all these resources. They go to the movie. And if their child can sit there for 5 minutes and then has to leave, that's what they do. And I remember a dad, he would come to every movie, no matter where it was. He would come. Some would come in, maybe 5 or 6 minutes, come out, run around a little bit, and then they'd leave. And he would apologize. We said, nope, that's the purpose of this. We just want to acclimate them and little at a time. I remember maybe it was 2 years later, they went through the whole movie.
Mhm.
And his dad came out and he said, did you notice? Did you see? We stayed for the whole movie. And he was so excited. And that may not seem like a big deal, but it was a real big deal for him because now he could go to the movies with the
Right.
son,
That's great.
you know?
It's a great story.
Yeah.
I have a lot of stories from the Got Child Access
Yeah.
program, which my co-executive director, Kate, is the director of that program. And she has done a really great job setting it up to be able to watch the students grow. So they come in year one, day one, ball of nerves, like, I don't know what I'm doing. This isn't high school. I don't know what is expected of me. And then just seeing their transformation through the 3 years. And then on the graduation day, there's a running joke. How many times is Mary going to cry at graduation this year? Because I just get so emotional that they've
Are you
come so
taking
far.
bets?
And just seeing the transformation, like there's some people that came in the beginning not even recognizing that they're autistic. And then by the end, they're like, yeah, I'm autistic and I'm proud of it. And it's just like, and then they want to work in the field. They want to be mentors.
Mhm.
It's like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And then we have an alumni of the Got Child Access program that just joined our board of directors. And he's also in the college navigation program. So he's
Nice.
doing
Yeah.
great.
That's great.
Now, if someone wants to volunteer their time or maybe a donation or something like that, is there ways to do that?
So on our website, we have a donate button right on the
Nice.
homepage. And then volunteers, we usually ask for volunteers around our family events. The big one is our walkathon, which is every April. It used to be in October, but it got moved to April.
Mhm.
That's Autism Acceptance Month. So we thought that it would just kind of went
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And we ask for a lot of volunteers and donations for that. And then throughout the
Mhm.
year at our family events, we're always looking for some help.
Mhm.
Nice.
Jan also has volunteers come in and help her make information packets.
Nice.
She sends out hundreds of those a year, so that's really helpful to her as well.
Beautiful.
That's wonderful.
I think so too.
Yeah, that's great. Um, well, I think we're getting to the end here.
I believe
We've been
so.
speaking for about an hour, and it's
Oh.
gone so quickly.
It's funny how time flies when you're
It
passionate
does.
about
Yeah.
something.
So-
Absolutely.
Is there one message you'd like to leave the audience who's
Mm.
watching this?
Just, I mean, autism awareness is what it was called. Everybody's aware of it now. Let's start accepting and getting them integrated into education and the college and then employment. And just like I said before, talk to them.
Mhm.
Like instead of saying, why are they doing that? Ask them why they're doing that.
Yep.
He's making video games.
Mhm.
How amazing is that?
Open minds, open hearts.
Yeah,
Honestly.
I love that.
Nice.
Great. Very good. Anything else you want to add for a message, or
Nope, that was
that was it?
I think that was a
summed it
perfect
up
ending.
beautifully.
Open
Perfect.
hearts.
Acceptance, appreciation
Yeah.
for who they are. Mhm.
Well, I want to thank you both for being part of this. It
Thanks
was
for having
great.
us.
I think
Thank
the audience will
you.
really appreciate it and learn a lot. I certainly did.
Me too.
And once again, thank you very much. And hopefully we'll have you back again down the road.
That'd be great.
Oh.
And I want to thank all of our audience for listening to our show. And if you like the educational content, you'd like to become a sponsor, please contact us at 774-319-4230. Special thanks to Ron Gamache for our intro music and the PC Institute for producing our show. And of course, Bay Coast Bank, which is just right for all of your financial needs. Visit baycoast.bank or call 508-678-7641 to learn more. And I also want to mention that all of our podcasts now are on our webpage too.
Yes.
Mm.
So if you go to 27 Degrees Consulting, you'll be able to see our prior
Yep.
podcasts. And of course, they're on YouTube and they're on your favorite podcast platform. But the website has a lot of really, I think, interesting content too. And then before we finish, it's very important that people know how to contact you. So
Yes.
who
So
do
our-
they call? What number?
It's 508-379-0371. And then they'll be greeted with a list of the extensions and who to talk
Great.
to for what. And then our website as well as communityautismresources.com with a hyphen between each of the words.
Nice.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you once again, everyone, for listening to our show. And have a great
Thanks.
day.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.